Hey, how's everybody doing? Today's subject is going to be basically, and it's actually an important one because that's something you don't want to do, but actually how dispatcher can end up triggering a DOT audit. Now, it's not you. There's certain things that you can do as a freight dispatcher that doesn't trigger a DOT, but you want to keep guard on your actual owner operator too, so he don't even trigger a DOT because it's going to hurt you. That's your client. You don't want to lose your clients. So, but anyways, we'll go over some points. Um, the hours of service and things like this, and it just gives you food for thought. So, if you don't know how this can happen, then this obviously be a good video for you. But so let's go over here. Our dispatcher can inadvertently or even directly contribute to a DOT audit, forcing or encouraging the hours of service violations. This was a common practice back in the day when I originally started transportation because we was running off of logbooks. I would literally do a logbook, start it, throw it away. I mean, some of them literally just throw it away and just skip all the trips that I had to begin with. And just having in my mind, I was going to make a story up because they didn't have a lot of ways other than the bills, and unless they're going to go to the company and do an audit where the bills have been coming over, following the paper trail, then it really wasn't a lot of, a lot that they could do. Um, as far as I know of, but the carriers never complained about it. So I wasn't about to complain about it because at that point, which I didn't know no better, I was running cents per mile, running chicken feed money. And, so if I was willing to run it, they were willing to let me run it. But, give me a second here. Feel like I'm drooling. So, but anyways, um, the most common trigger, and now this obviously perhaps probably the biggest trigger and most directly way to a dispatcher can cause this problem if the dispatcher consistently pushes drivers to drive beyond legal hours of service. Remember your rules where we stand at now. You got 11 hours of driving time, 14 hours, including those 11 hours of total on duty time. That includes, so you got 11 hours plus 3 hours to do whatever you need to do with. They got to get a 30-minute break in that side, that same 14 hours. They cannot exceed that 14 hours. And obviously, if they're on the 60 or 70-hour weekly limit, so the 60 hours based off 7 days, and the 70 hours is based off 8 days. And most people that I know have ever dealt with, we ran off the 8-day rule. Also, ELD manipulation, pressuring drivers to falsify electronic logging devices, which it used to be capable, like keep trucking and stuff. You could actually go in there and, fix them around to keep yourself moving. But now that DOT has got more, or the FMC, CSA has got their hands on it more, they actually have now started canceling some of these ELD services because that's the whole thing. They'll pay, hey, send me $25 or $15 and I'll change your logbook, your ELD. And why would you not? So that is out there. So just keep in mind, and you can ask your driver, I mean, what ELD service he's using, and they might even do it for him. And and actually, some of that crap has actually made the news where that's actually happened, and the driver ended up doing a lot of, I mean, apparently, a lot of prison time. What they do to the carrier, who knows? I don't never follow up on that much because you usually got to have a foot inside their office to know what goes on behind the scenes. Fatigue driving, man. You think you can't be fatigued, and you say, well, all you're doing is driving 70 hours. Well, obviously, you don't know a lot about trucking. Um, that happens all the time. I mean, I've had it. If it wasn't for two-lane roads, I would have never made it to the next exit. So don't run your drivers. Not only is it fatigue, but it also comes a chronic fatigue, which is actually a medical diagnosis. So don't push your drivers beyond their limits. Make sure they get plenty of rest. There's nothing in that truck that is worth his life, his freedom, or the people in the other cars that he's going to take out. If you do keep leading them to chronic fatigue, this obviously leads to unsafe driving and increased accident risk. Audit impact. Now, hours of service violations are the primary focus of DOT audits because they're so common. Frequent hours of service violations caught during roadside inspections and through ELD and data analysis, because they can pull everything on that ELD, will significantly worsen a carrier's hour of service compliance. Remember, it's part of the basic score. Remember your CSA? It's going to reflect back on there, making them a high priority target for an audit. Employee complaints about being forced to drive illegally are also are a major trigger. And have I ever done it? Yeah, dude. They ran me so hard. I literally had a state trooper living down the street from me, and I literally went down and said, "Look, can you issue me a warning or something? Because they're trying to make me run, and I got to have something to turn into these pricks. They're trying to run me to death." Is there any way you can help me out so I'm not out there running on that road? And he did me the favor. He wrote me a warning ticket, which I sent that in. I said they put me out of service. At least gave me some more time to catch up. Because when you're actually totally fatigued when it comes to hours of service, you really just don't give a crap no more. You're totally exhausted, and nobody gives a crap. Um, Obviously, poor communication leading to unsafe driving practice. Russian drivers quit trying to push people out the door. They know what they're doing. They know their limitations. Yeah, you got a load, and if you have to reschedule it as a freight dispatcher, then you need to start talking to the broker. But you always got to remind the owner operator that he needs to make sure he understands that he agreed to the load. He knew it was there, because the last thing you want to do is get a failure of service and get a freight guard. But anyways, constantly pressuring drivers to meet unrealistic deadlines can obviously lead to speeding because they're trying to hustle. Speeding tickets, wrecks again, right? Reckless driving, just jerking around it. We see that even when they're not tired, but you're increasing the opportunity for this to happen. And aggressive driving. It could be for any reason. They're trying to get through traffic, or they're pissed off by what you just pushed them out the door to do. People hold resentment for a long time. So don't force your people. You work for that owner operator as an independent freight dispatcher. Listen to what they're saying. But if you get out of line communication, you don't want to destroy the relationship, but also you don't want to destroy the truck that he's in, because that may be his only truck. And most people don't usually have the money to get another one, because insurance usually ain't going to pay off. And a lot of people just cut it loose. If they have a close enough call, it just ain't worth it. So an audit impact, now this behaviors directly impact their unsafe driving basic score. Um, High scores are a significant red flag to auditors, and DOT is definitely going to keep pulling them in, wasting time, tearing their logs apart, their ELD, tearing everything apart. I mean, they're looking for anything at that given point. They'll probably even do a level 1 inspection. So don't make it so that they're a walking red flag. It doesn't do them no good. So make sure they stay in compliance, because make this a long journey with that given client, because there's other ways to make sure they're effectively making cash outside of hauling ass and driving tired. Now, inadequate load planning leading to vehicle maintenance issues. Now, overloading or improper weight distribution, you got to spread it out. I've had trailers where I was laying sideways with rolls of paper. So don't overload them in a bad way. Make sure those pallets are put in there correctly. The owner operator should know, but if he's complaining, then you need to get on the phone and tell him, hey, look, they got to move that load around. It's not right if they're not wanting to cooperate with the owner operator. And don't overload the truck. You know what the load truck weighs, the truck and trailer weighs with full tanks to begin with. It's on their driver profile. So don't overload their equipment. And also sending that truck out with an overload trailer or poorly distributed weight heightens the ability to obviously have wrecks. That truck is designed for a certain purpose and the specs that it's designed for, and those trailers are too. So don't exceed it. I've seen trailers literally break in half. So don't push it to that limit. Now, neglecting pre and the post trip inspections, they're not giving drivers enough time and emphasizing the importance of a thorough inspection and pressuring them to skip the inspection. Look, it takes them 15 minutes to do it. Post trip is basically just a quick walk around, which may find something that might hamper the next day. But the pre trip is where they check everything out, make sure all the tires are still inflated. I've had mine go flat in the end of the night, and a tire coming off that wheel and crushing through the windshield of a car and killing a kid or anybody else is definitely going to hold the whole day up. And it might even come back on you, and some, because people can file a private lawsuit against anybody and claim that you're responsible for that given situation. So don't think you can't be jammed up. I mean, yeah, you're on COI, but that covers freight. That doesn't cover your overall professional responsibility to help that owner operator operate responsibly, but always cover your butt. Now, ignoring driver reports of defects, that's usually coming from a mechanic. If a dispatcher dismisses a driver report of a vehicle defect, even on their sheet, like their ELD, um, like one of the biggest things, like just keep going. Man, can I tell you how many times I heard that? Or just make it to the next stop. Man, instead of arranging an immediate repair, this obviously could lead out of service hours because somebody pulls you over. A DOT officer can pull you over anytime, anywhere. It don't have to be in the DOT station. If they see something hanging out of that truck, they're going to get you. Accidents, I mean, that's caused by vehicle failure. That's the best failure to maintain the equipment. But vehicles being placed out of service during roadside inspections due to mechanical defects, 100% preventative. Even the accidents that's secondary to that truck not being taken care of properly. That's the reason when I actually forward a new carrier owner operator with me and their truck's over 5 years, one, I know that truck is out of its warranty. So I'm going to actually insist, or I'm not going to be able to play with you because you're playing with my money too, that you got to take that thing to Love's or Pilot and get a new inspection. And I will send them a list um, of things that I know it needs to be looked at that is not normally on an annual inspection report. Because what if they have hydraulics? I mean, any leaks or anything like that, they ain't supposed to be coming from that vehicle. So all that needs to be checked off. Now they won't check it off in their inspection because it's not on their inspection sheet, but the mechanic will highlight those notes in the mechanic notes. Okay. So by having that, get them to send it back, that covers you. And he says that he has it. And now if it's something that just goes bad, and because I have no trucks and I know what happens to trucks, and I suspect that it was something because he was hiding the fact that he had an underlying problem, then we're probably going to cut ways. He's lying to me. If he's going to lie to me, then he's going to lie again. So I don't need them problems even in my life. So you have to make decisions what's passable, what's not passable, but you've gave all the steps to him that he's supposed to honor because now he hired you on unlimited power of attorney that you represent him in his best interest. So it's not like you're his partner, you're not his business partner, but you are the freight dispatcher that's supposed to cover all those things. But the main thing the driver really does when he has a freight dispatcher, he's really looking at the maintenance and he's looking at driving that thing safely without killing anybody. The rest of it you need to be handling, but you still have to keep on him about, I need that inspection report to get him going to begin with. Otherwise, we open a can of worms that now you're hung with, and yeah, you can dump him immediately, but that don't do no good. It messes your reputation. Stick with your people to the very end and settle it out in um, a very obviously as pleasant as you can make it. Because I mean, most people want to argue in trucking for whatever reason, but you got people that are, hey, okay, let's get this fixed. Let's get all the paperwork. Let's get everything straight out and split ways. So try to be diplomatic about it. Now, audit impact. Now, frequent vehicle defects like out of service violations contribute to poor vehicle maintenance, and that's part of the basic. Remember the basic, the 7 steps. Um, Score and is also what also trigger an audit because now that's added more points to it. The newer it is, the more likely it is to trigger that audit. Now, improperly handling of hazardous materials. This should be a no-brainer. Lack of proper documentation and placarding is a no-go. Um, and the fines on it, I don't know what they are, and I always placard my stuff extremely well. But also having placards on there that don't belong in there can also be a violation. So it's supposed to be exactly what the contents that's on that bill of lading that should be in that left door on that driver's seat within reach of that driver when he's in that equipment. That's what they're looking at, and it needs to match what's on that truck and what's in that truck. Um, but anyways, assigning unqualified drivers, you can't put somebody that don't have a hazmat on there. If something happens, not only will it kill people around him, and he won't be actually literally following protocols as far as being able to handle that equipment, but he could kill himself. If he's not upwind and it's a toxic gas or whatever is in there, and if he don't know how to use the manual and know how to get a proper services, warn the firefighters or anybody approaching the vehicle, then they're going to find him for neglect because he knows what's in that truck. You should always know what's in your trucks. So you as a dispatcher need to make sure that when you're dispatching these loads, not only are you looking at the exclusions on the insurance, which is not relative to any of this, but you need to make sure that that group guy is qualified to actually pull that freight. And you understand, I mean, you're not testing him, okay? You just need to make sure he's got the qualifications. Don't start trying to run a 50 question test on him. Just make sure he's got the qualifications and you've done your part. Um, Audit impact, obviously violations in this area like hazardous material, obviously that again violates the basic compliance and are taken very seriously and can quickly lead to audits and severe penalties, major, that might probably put him out of business. Now, the next one's going to be failure to maintain proper records or contribute to discrepancies. Now, while dispatchers don't typically maintain the official records, their daily interactions generate data like for example, load details, driver movements, communication logs. Those all need to make sure that everything is actually handled correctly where the documents need to be at. Because when they audit, they're not going to dig around. They'll just violate you, and then that's going to be the end of it. Now, with discrepancies, now if the information a dispatcher uses or records doesn't align with the ELD data or the driver's logs or other company records, any of them, it can obviously create inconsistencies that auditors obviously will find, flag, and find, and or shut them down. Next thing is lack of communication records, inability to provide proof of instructions given to drivers regarding routes, safety, and hours of service. So most drivers are going to know this, but if it's something, let's say if you're doing oversized and you're responsible for giving them the permits and stuff, which actually has a route that they have to follow, in which they should be able to recognize it and not just drum it up out of their head. But if you got any of these violations, it's going to still, there's no excuse for it. And that's definitely going to fall back on you because you should have passed, you are an information highway. If you're not passing on the right information, coming and going, it's going to be you sitting in the hot chair. Now, as far as an audit impact, auditors with maliciously will cross-reference, I'm sorry, maliciously, the meticulously, I need to know my words, will actually cross-reference all these documents, and any discrepancies obviously suggest poor management, which red flags them, and it can obviously broaden the scope of that audit. Now, ignoring or contributing to a driver's fitness issues, pressuring unqualified drivers, knowing a driver might have an expired medical card, hell no, because that means their license is no good either. Suspended CDL, they're not qualified. I don't care if they do have a CDL, they're no longer qualified. SAP, if it's not covered under issues, but if they're out there using drugs and you know that and they can prove it, you're going to be in trouble too. But you keep on dispatching them, I'm gonna tell you right there, that and right there, you better take it serious because they can come get you. Okay, you don't, they're not gonna be on the hook the way much as he is, but they're gonna definitely, they can still find you. I mean, they've got laws for everything. Don't play with this. Make sure that what you're doing. Do I teach you everything about looking at this, looking at that, what actually makes the process between you being an independent freight dispatcher and following the regulations put out there by FMCSA and DOT. I don't know. Those two words mean something. They're two different organizations, but they're connected together at the same time. And it's federal. Don't play with this. Okay. Trucking companies play with it all the time. And those that get caught sure the hell wish they wasn't even alive that day. And there's nothing like, I've actually been part of a DOT audit. There's nothing like trying to rewrite a story after the fact and the driver can't be found and you're having to retrace his footsteps on what happened, when, and where. You asked me what I was doing on a given date. Man, I don't know. I was taking a crap in the Petro. I have no idea what I was doing. So, but anyways, getting back to the point about the suspended license, alcohol, and medical card, violations related to driver qualifications directly affect the driver's fitness basic score. So he doesn't meet the criteria. He's out of realm. He's no longer qualified to drive that equipment, no matter which part's out of place. So make sure you know that. Ain't nothing like getting the truck knocked out because they're not going to let him drive it. Now he has to go get a physical or he's out of his state and he needs a driver's license renewal. Any of that's going to be one hell of a problem. Now, complaints from drivers are public. Now, disgruntled drivers, a dispatcher's aggressive, disrespectful, or demanding behavior can lead to disgruntled drivers to file formal complaints with the FMCSA/DOT. These complaints are taken seriously. And what they're going to be doing is looking at carrier. Now, you as an independent freight dispatcher basically are absolved of all this because you're not a trucking company. You are literally a high-paid secretary that understands logistics. So basically that owner operator can just straight fire you. But if you're working for a carrier, a big carrier, and you're actually working for them as a dispatcher, this is what you see coming back at those type of folks. Now, public complaints. Now, if a dispatcher's actions leads to a driver engaging in reckless driving that generates public complaints, this can obviously trigger investigations. That right there, I'm not sure how far it can come back in you, and I don't know what it would look like, so I'm not even going to attempt to explain that. Just be aware, public complaints are taken serious because they call the Department of Transportation or the Highway Patrol or whatever it is. And if they decide to fill out a reports, then welcome to the legal system. You just got wrapped up in it. Safety complaints, regardless of the origin, are known to trigger DOT and audits. Not saying they always do. I'm not saying any of this does. I'm just giving you the red flags that do actually trigger audits with the DOT. Now, so a dispatcher's primary role is to ensure that loads are moved effectively, but they must do so within the strict confines of DOT safety regulations. their regulations, not yours. They're the government. You have to follow these. Now, any dispatching practice that prioritizes speed or profit over safety and compliance will inevitably lead to a higher CSA score. Problematic. Higher CSA score, you're losing freight, you're losing all kinds of things that come with this, and significantly increasing the likelihood that DOT audit will be triggered for that given MC or that trucking company or carrier, whichever way you want to put it. But that CSA score is the whole thing behind this because that's your moneymaker. Okay. Like they say, don't hit the moneymaker. The CSA score is your moneymaker. So keep that score down so that driver stays effectively able to secure freight through you and you're not begging for freight because you have nobody wanting to give you freight. But anyways, I'm going to leave it at that. So that right there should give you a pretty good general idea of what you're looking at when you're actually doing with, you're triggering an audit yourself as a freight dispatcher. So you are just as accountable for some things as they are. So don't screw your driver over by pushing all this other craziness because some people just don't know. They're young. Even just because they got a truck don't mean they've been in transportation a long, long time. Daddy gave them $100,000, go get your truck, make money with it, but that doesn't mean they understand how logistics actually is. You are that safe gatekeeper between them and problems. So you're the crossroads of everything. So make sure when you take on this responsibility, you're not babysitting them. They're grown men. They own their trucks. But look out for what actually affects you. And if it affects them, it affects their ability to operate and it affects my profitability. So I don't want to go down that road with them because I want them to understand I'm looking out for their best interests at all times. But that being said, I'll leave it at that. If you have questions, please, questions or concerns or anything like that, make sure to address, send that into the content box where it says reply or whatever, make comments. Also like or subscribe this. If you need me, contact information is below. I hope this helped you understand as a freight dispatcher, your overall, responsibility of how you can cause problems for yourself and what you do as an independent freight dispatcher. But anyways, I hope this helps. I hope you learned something and I appreciate it. Everybody have a blessed day. If you're out there on the road, be safe and let's move on to the next subject.